Thank you, everybody, for all the panelists. Some really fascinating use cases and insights that you shared. We, from an academic perspective, are obviously observers of this phenomenon which is going on. So, what I'm going to share today is based on some of our observations and inferences that we've made based on research we are doing on AI adoption. Before I put my presentation up, I would like to introduce myself as well, because prior to joining academics, I spent more than 20 years myself as a practitioner in the industry, working in multiple digital transformation programs. Then I finished my PhD here from the University of Cambridge and have continued on that academic journey now. So I'll bring insights both from a practitioner perspective, and you can obviously answer questions, me questions based on those as well. Uh, so before um, we begin, discussing AI adoption itself, I just wanted to share a little bit of a reality check, and some of that reality check, very very interestingly, Kate already got through the very very unscientifically run poll on Menti itself, and then what I will try to do. I hope you can see my screen there. I'm going to introduce uh, the stages of adoption as we are framing it right now as part of this research. And before you see that, I also want to mention that this is not research which I'm doing alone. Benjamin, who is also here as one of the attendees, is also part of this research along with Professor Mohammed, who's supervising this work as well. So some of that reality check, we've heard from these anecdotal stories that most of the organizations are in POCs or pilots, but very few are actually, as per this research, suggesting that they're generating, proper value streams. It's just 4%. However, still there are high investments which are going into AI, and it's forecasted that it's going to reach like, 52 billion as early as the early 2030s itself, with a growth of 45% year on year. And some of that, as we can see, is translating into what you saw on that poll over here, with people getting overwhelmed with that level of investment, humans themselves, which we'll come to. In academics as well, there are a few academics on in the attendees, and they feel that there's no guidance. And one of the objectives of this research is to actually find some guidance as well for scholars. Um, the human aspect, interestingly, also comes from uh, the challenge, what is happening in the businesses, as somebody mentioned that, oh, there is a lot of talk about AI, so just deploy a few people onto this new thing, and let's find out what can come out of this, rather than having proper planning and discussion about value and return on investments. Um, and who anybody who's interested in AI may have gone through this MIT report, which created a lot of headlines on 95% of these AI pilots fail to deliver ROI. Uh, but if somebody read underneath within the details of that report, the challenges that were mentioned were that there are a very high number of pilots, but very few of them actually scale up. And that initial eagerness and enthusiasm that we've seen post that chat GPT is not necessarily converting into adoption at scale. Another interesting insight in that report was that the actual divide is a learning divide. It's not about skills, it's not about infrastructure. It's actually about how can we make these tools integrate into the existing business and match the existing workflows that businesses, especially in established organizations. Therefore, of course, the clear challenge that we see is about how can AI adoption journeys become more successful. Hence, we embarked on this research to figure out, to what extent that AI can introduce value through improved adoption. And apart from the practical guidance, I just saw in that word cloud that academic guidance is also needed. So of course, we'll also provide academic guidance, which is a clear part of the research as well. And we are actually conducting three studies in parallel. We have conducted several exploratory interviews. Apart from that, uh, we are actually observing couple of businesses, one large established business who is our partner at the Cambridge Services Alliance, AstraZeneca, and another startup in parallel to understand how AI is adopted between these two businesses, and then several case studies as well we are conducting. All of this, we are trying to do this iteratively in parallel to find out the answers and solutions to these challenges. Um, and before I get into the data and some of the insights, just to establish a few uh, definitions over here, how AI is being defined basically by many communities, scientists like Max Tegmark and the whole Life 3.0 group. Very simple, nice definitions, non-biological intelligence, which actually, and wherein they say intelligence means ability to accomplish goals. And they also try to actually define artificial general intelligence. Academics define it in a very, very systematic way with computers that can decide for themselves. And policymakers also have, of course, done a lot of work recently. And I saw people like Ian also trying to adopt the EU AI Act as well as part of their policy and governance frameworks. Uh, from from our perspective, what we are seeing is, I mean, we can classify, and there are many ways to classify agents, by the way, but just to make sure that where this research is actually focused on, we classify these agents into personal use, like all of us are trying to use ChatGPT or many other ways we can self create our own agents these days. There are so many platforms available. I just saw an NA10 diagram which was put together. So anybody, it's pretty simple to actually create one of those automations as well. And then AI in the enterprise or agents in the enterprise as well. So this in this research, what we are focusing on is a business's perspective on adoption of AI or agentic AI. Although some of these agents will have common characteristics that we just heard from some of the panelists as well, like doesn't get, the all the call center examples that you were just mentioning, that they don't get tired, they don't have fatigue. Some people are asking questions about, can we introduce emotions? Can we, and I put them as question marks, by the way, over here. Can they achieve consciousness? There are a lot of such questions which are there. Can they become decision makers in their own right? Will we have a CEO agent, for example? And there are some of these common characteristics which will be there in these agents. However, from the research perspective, what we are trying to focus on is adoption of AI within a business. That's what is the idea of the study. And so far, what we've done is we've tried to look at what's happening in multiple scenarios, and we've conducted conversations with senior leaders who are involved in AI implementation or AI change within their businesses. We are conducting observation, as I mentioned, with our partners. I'm actually part of AstraZeneca's steering committee, observing how the transformation is going on and how they are applying AI for that transformation. And I'm also part of the board of ICO, which is another AI native service provider who I will introduce. They are into trying to find solutions to fan engagement across, clubs, football clubs, as well as betting operators, as well as leagues, etc. That's the business that they are into as a startup. So I'm also part of that advisory board and observing their transformation, which is slightly different from how AstraZeneca is approaching this. transformation. So, some initial insights that we have gained so far from these adoption journeys from so many of these scenarios is what I'm going to share. What we have seen basically is that this is not some sort of a silver bullet that we apply AI and you'll start to get produce ROI, but we are seeing six sort of stages of AI adoption through which a use case or collection of use cases go through, which starts from planning, gets into qualifications, stroke selection, then businesses actually pilot, implement, scale up, and ultimately institutionalize where AI is all pervasive. And now these phases are applicable to, you can call it Gen AI agents, AI enabled machine learning, any of those sorts of changes. However, there's a slight difference from regular IT adoption where it's about incremental evolution. But in AI, there's constant change which is going on, is what we are observing right now in these stages and phases. The other aspect which is interesting with these stages of adoption is that maybe some of these stages may get accelerated very fast because of the presence of AI within each of those stages as well. So you can maybe plan even better with AI. You can plan it faster with AI. You can do qualification much faster with AI. But it doesn't mean that the businesses will not have to actually progressively go through these stages to actually implement and govern AI. An example of planning, as I mentioned, AstraZeneca, of course, in the core part of their pharmaceutical business with research and development, a lot of, as we know, it's a science-based business. If anybody is not aware of AstraZeneca, just quickly let me tell you, they're one of the largest pharmaceutical businesses who research and develop drugs which are actually practically available globally everywhere in multiple sort of diseases that they're targeting, mainly primarily cancer related drugs. Uh, so in that part of their business, there's a strong application of machine learning techniques in any case. However, as a business, they have realized to actually grow and reach their targeted vision, they would need to accelerate with AI to change how their global processes work across the whole uh, globe, across every region. And hence, they are adopting AI to bring acceleration to that program. So there's a very clear vision, there are very specific goals to make that AI transformation strategy very, very executable in that sort of first stage. And that does not necessarily mean just look at internal capabilities. This is where they have partnered, like you mentioned, Ian from JLR, very, very similar thing. Look at the whole ecosystem, partner with people who have done this better, understand the whole landscape to actually develop a vision which is realizable. The next stage, interestingly, here I'll introduce a startup which is called Asteri, a Silicon Valley startup, which is a work intelligence orchestrator, which we call qualification and selection, basically, as to you actually need to qualify some of these use cases uh, to define a clear value anchor behind which some of these use cases can be delivered, but then also understand which are the actual specific tasks which can be accelerated with AI. So, again, this is another startup which is working in the life sciences space, working in partnership with AstraZeneca to help qualify some of these tasks at a task level, not just at a business process level, but look at the work breakdown, roles up to a task level and see and do a comparison as to which tasks can be improved with AI and which tasks can be improved with humans as well. It's not just, by the way, the answer never comes always, it's always AI. The answer also sometimes comes that it's human who can perform that task better. And on that note, actually, is we pause and ask ourselves this question: is every use case an AI use case? Is something which is very important to answer at this stage as well. And I want to juxtapose two examples over here. Uh, and interestingly, two totally different businesses. Booking.com, I think most of you will be again aware over here. Here they are trying to um, market human experiences to us, which is about traveling, which is about, going to different parts of the world, but entirely online. They are applying AI all over their business to improve their KPIs and improve their performance measures. While on the other side of things, Richer Sounds is a UK high street brand which sells high tech experiences, high definition TVs, those large screens, etc., which is a very, very uh, in store experience, is something which most of us these days are almost buying all of these things out of AO.com or Amazon, these sort of products. But this is a business which is selling these electronics in store, mostly, primarily with human experts, and again achieving enormous success. They just got ranked as the number one experience brand here in the UK. And I would encourage everybody to check out Richer Sounds, how they're using human experts to actually implement their use case. Mm, Moving on with the experimentation and pilot stage over here, I'll give the example back to ICO. How ICO was developed as a startup. Of course, there was a lot of proof of concepting going on with multiple segments of businesses, whether it was fantasy gaming, whether it was football clubs, to run controlled pilots with a small set of customers. Uh, and there is no shortcut. They just got they a few months back they got funding now to actually accelerate this, to be able to scale this up. But this is a major challenge that we observe. This is where a lot of initiatives stall, or there are a lot of indecisions which happen in this stage, and it's very important to get the objectives of this stage right to actually progress to the next stage, which is what most businesses are interested in, is actually implement this and roll out to wider set of users, customers within their business. And again, I'll bring back AstraZeneca's example over here, where there was a major challenge with generating standard operating procedures within the business. As you know, the processes were going to change. So after piloting this, it was very clear that drafting of these standard operating procedures actually takes very few. It takes just a few minutes for AI to do this. However, humans still need to be responsible to check, review, redraft those procedures. So rolling out and scaling up was a challenge. So it took a while, but ultimately it has been scaled out to one of the markets now, where it's very, very clear what the accountability is going to be. Therefore, it's important at this stage to understand what the human accountability is going to be in the process, and make sure that that risk mitigation is in place. And Manoj asked a question, how to govern. These are the stages in which that governance becomes important, even more than, let's say, some of the very, very early stages. Although there's no, like I mentioned, there's no substitute to governance at any of these stages. Moving on, of course, scaling up. This is another interesting business who actually, a lot of my own PhD data came from KFC. Now, this is part of Yum Foods. What they have done is quite interesting. Is they've built this Bite by Yum platform, which is the centralized platform which is taking up all the transactions across all of their businesses. And this was done again by finding synergies across those businesses to scale this up at a global level. With, and of course, to de-risk their business as well with all the security controls and governance which is possible. Last but not the least, here I would encourage people uh, to, before I even ask you to answer that question, which business has institutionalized their AI strategy, what it really means is where now AI is all pervasive, and all of these conversations that we are trying to have, that become lesser and lesser. It's pretty well understood within the businesses and the organization structures and governance processes are all in place. In your view, you can please type your responses in the chat window, and maybe by the end of it, we'll see who believes which business has actually institutionalized their AI strategy. If you believe it's none, then also type none. We are in search of such institutionalized businesses at this stage for our research. As you can see, that example column for an institutionalized business right now is blank on the right hand side. But summing up all of these stages, they all have their own drivers for change. They all have their own set of challenges as you progress from one stage to the other. They all have data dependencies, which also change, like from being initial exploratory data to contextual data to actually having continuous data pipelines in place, well automated, so that it can work at scale and be institutionalized. And even from an academic perspective, I know somebody said that academic understanding is a challenge. All of these phases, multiple theories are actually applicable. I'm not going to drain you into those theories, but we are evaluating which theories could be most applicable to understand these stages as we continue our research. Uh, One another interesting insight that we saw based on these drivers is a comparison between the AI natives and established firms, not just the two case studies that we are deeply involved in, which is AstraZeneca and ICO, is that actually some of the steps or the drivers for change that these businesses are going through remain the same, but the order is different. So maybe an established business may try to find some efficiency in one of the processes and then accelerate, and then realize that, oh, we can actually enable our entire business model through AI. The AI natives actually start totally in a different way, where they try to disrupt the business model with AI. They are driven by AI and they want to innovate as a challenger. And ultimately, then, and I can see this in ICO's case, I can tell you, right now they're at the stage where they're also trying to find lots of efficiencies with fine tuning because some of the cost for each transaction is increasing. Earlier it would be fine to try and use up a lot of tokens to find answers to challenges, but now they are also trying to reduce the costs of the token, so they also end up in the efficiency challenges, although at one of the later stages on their adoption journey. So yeah, ultimately, if you want to build a successful transformation roadmap with AI, translating some of these AI adoption approaches, nothing new over here basically, but what I wanted to plug over here is in all stages of this roadmap with all of the activities, whether it's from building a vision to actually enabling your AI strategy with data, our research from Cambridge Service Alliance, we are uh, uh, either from a past research that we've done or the present research that we're doing, we have offerings from in all of these stages, whether you want to do run a data-driven business model, figure out agentic AI in action. Bingson over here is in this audience who's looking at that, or you would like to perform a strategic assessment. We conduct these aspects within the entire roadmap. And of course, you can reach out to us for any questions, and I'm here for the next 5 minutes to answer any more questions. Thank you so much. My presentation. First of all,